some governments. AHF is launching the Protect the Child campaign to advocate for access to and implementation of CSE. Studies have shown that CSE helps to reduce teenage pregnancies, HIV and STI, GBV, and sexual exploitations, and improve young people's ability to make more informed and healthy choices. Considering the stats, more people need to get involved in promoting CSE, and today we put the spotlight on creatives. How can creatives contribute to advocating for access to CSE and its benefits for young people's health and well-being, including young women and girls? I'm really excited about the range of speakers who have made time to join us in this discussion today. We're joined by a group of creative experts who bring the experience and insights from having done these works across sectors for many years. And so I'd like to start off by introducing the only male among our speakers, our panel of speakers today, Peter, who is a creative with East African Breweries Limited, EABL, Sarine, who is our associate graphic designer at AIDS Healthcare Foundation, Macrina, who is a girls. Just a moment. Sorry for that. Yeah, so saying Macrina Cheboy, who is the gender affairs advocate with Binti Sodo Foundation, and Hilda Kadure, who is a girls education officer and a documentary filmmaker at Karl Marx Production. Thank you for joining us. And just to reiterate again for everybody, the speakers will be taking questions from the audience. Feel free to put your questions in the chat and we will make sure the questions get addressed after the initial discussion that we have with our speakers. Just to get right into the discussion and without wasting any more time, we've already laid out the agenda that we have for the webinar today. And to begin with, I would like to tackle the first question, directing it to all speakers. How can creatives in the industry utilize their skills to better illustrate what it is like to experience the world as a young person? So our speakers, anyone could take this. Sarine, maybe you could start us off, if that's fine with you.
Hi, Claire. Yes, of course. Thank you everyone for having me today. I think one of the most important things we as designers and creatives need to do is making sure that the content and materials that we're making are going to foster empathy and understanding for young people. A lot of times, like, young people can be misunderstood, whether it's from their parents or authoritative figures. And I think really making sure that we are, especially if we're addressing parents or educators, are trying to identify key areas or topics that youth are struggling with today that maybe their generation was also having difficulties talking about. And I think establishing that mutual connection really does help to foster some empathy and putting these key figures in the shoes of youth. And I also think that we're all visual learners, so having the right imagery and visuals will really help to establish that empathy.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi everyone. So I guess I'm kind of going to reiterate on what Sarine said, with more emphasis on what communication has always been deemed as effective in society, and we all know that communication has largely been verbal, and when now we bring in this whole conversation of how creatives can shake up the industry in trying to bring it these sensible issues around CSE. I guess we can all agree that communication now, it's more digitalized, and if we find the perfect way to balance that out, and not just leaving out what the basis of communication has always been, which has been to make information more easier to consume and understand. So I guess when we bring in the whole digital aspect to it, and in relation to communicating to young people, having the nice simple language that is very quick to understand, and it kind of makes it it solves one issue right there when you're now trying to address these major issues around GBV and sexual exploitation, and how can we address moving forward to make it more inclusive in our schools, and creating a better world for them. I guess it's all about making that communication more easier to consume for them, right? Claire?
Okay, thank you for those insights. I don't know if Macrina and Hilda, you have anything else to add on to that?
I can add in something. So electricity, no access to smartphones.
Hilda, your network.
You can't hear me?
Yeah, you're hanging, you're freezing.
Can you hear me now? So let me try to take it again. So I was saying, I work with girls in the rural areas, in the pastoral counties, girls who have no access to electricity, girls who have no access to smartphones, most of them, and who move with their parents in search for pasture for their animals. So it's a special group of girls who also need sexual education. So every time we go, we try to create visual media where they can watch or listen to other girls from other places, how they are doing. So sometimes we use a projector and a generator, and we call it cinema for the pastoralists, but they get to see what is happening to other girls, and they learn from them, because through visuals, then they get to know that there are other girls like them, but they're doing different things from what they're doing. So I think that's the kind of innovation I use to show girls what is happening to other people. Thank you.
That's quite wonderful to learn what exactly you do with the girls in Northeastern. And it's quite impressive, let me say. And we really appreciate the efforts that you put in to helping those girls. Macrina, I'll bring
Thank you so much, Claire, for the opportunity. Communicating with the young people basically involves how the creative way in which we can connect to these young people in both urban and the rural areas, as Hilda has mentioned. So how we communicate basically depends with the audience we're actually looking at exactly. So I feel like the way we'd communicate with the youngsters who are born in the urban areas, probably through the social media, be it podcasts, Instagram, Facebook, is not actually the same way we'd pass information with the girls who are actually in the rural areas who are not exposed, yeah? So you'd find like these people may not really know what's happening in the different places of this country because they are not exposed. And so you find that is a very creative way of what Hilda is doing, because also work with girls who are really not, who are from marginalized communities. And you find that they really have challenges when they perform very well and go to national schools and they have to meet people who, you know, are exposed, who are not very exposed, and then they have challenges. And so I feel audience really matters in how we plan to communicate with the different young people. So as creatives, that is something we really need to look up to. How are we going to package information so that it fits the young people who are coming from the marginalized areas or who are not exposed, and how are we going to package information to fit those people who are exposed? Yeah, so for me, that's it.
That's great. It's actually great to quite understand exactly what you are into with the girls, Macrina, and it's quite commendable again. And so, yeah, I'll now take the second question, that is there a thing like creative advocacy? And if yes, what would it take like, what would it look like representing young people's needs, perspective, and voices? If Sareen, you could kindly take us through with this discussion, we really appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Claire. Short answer, I think yes. I do believe advocacy can be creative, and it is creative. And I think one of the ways AHF, in my experience, has successfully achieved this is through our Girls Act and young people's programs, where we really look to our youth for guidance and direct feedback on what topics and types of messaging they need us to produce for them. It's been really helpful for us in putting their voices and opinions directly into the work that we're doing. And I think all advocacy efforts have the ability to be creative. So it's not just creating whether a social media campaign or posters or flyers or things that we're trying to reach through billboards. It has the ability to be interactive and creative as well, whether it's through like a letter writing campaign or making something that's interactive that a public space can engage with. So I think, yeah, definitely the way that we think outside the box, the more creative our advocacy can be.
I'll take it on. Hilda, anything to add on to that?
I believe creative advocacy is about creating an emotional connection. So when they connect with whatever they're watching or whatever they are reading, then it creates effectiveness, because then they try to remember the message, they try to associate it with their lives. The creative approach creates a stronger connection to your audience. So sometimes when you're creative, then the local media can pick it, and it can get to a wider audience. It will get people inspired to take action where need be. And also to the girls themselves, then it gives them motivation that whatever they never knew, they're learning it and they're practicing it. And that makes creative advocacy very key when communicating. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilda. Peter, I'll throw this to you.
Okay, so advocacy is definitely a big it plays a very huge role, especially when it comes to society and any issues that are very touchy. And for the most part, even here in Kenya, there are a lot of creative advocacy programs that do run. The most reputable ones that people may know are like Sauti and Dada, African Voices, Tribeless Youth. They've been at the forefront of running a lot of campaigns in and around Kenya, where we have summits being held on a yearly basis, where they bring together different marginalized groups, and they help create a sense of a critical thinking session where people can brainstorm and give their ideas on how they can push their voices and be heard when it comes to such topics, and more specifically even about CSE. Because this is not the first time that we're having this conversation, and I believe you can all support me on that. We've been having this. It's been a long time coming when we talk about how can we integrate it and make it more inclusive in our education system, without having to feel iffy about it. I mean, we have to find ways where the society can be more open and ready to talk about it with a bit more confidence than they've handled it before. Because I feel in Africa, but let me actually just speak about Kenya, and how growing up here, the sex talk, it's not quite like it's not a conversation that anyone usually likes having with parents especially. So having these creative advocacy programs really helps to put that word out there and really accelerate how society views sex education and any other topic that relates to young people and bringing up what they need.
Thank you, Peter. Macrina, do you have any follow-ups to that?
I'll make it simple. For me, creative advocacy involves asking and answering the following questions: the who, what, why, and when. The who, like, who are these people, who are our audience? Who are these people actually conducting this creative advocacy? Who are the audience? Like, are they the girls or the youths? And then what tool are we going to use to voice our issues? Are we going to use social media? Are we going to use hashtag if it's social media, you know, whatever space we're going to use? Is it offline or online? And then why are we actually doing it? So what is our goal? What do we hope to achieve at the end of the advocacy? And then finally, what are we doing different? Because as Peter here has mentioned, that there are quite a number of advocacy programs. So in order for us to achieve our respective goals and agenda, so what are we going to do different to enable ourselves achieve this particular goal? Thank you.
Thank you so much for laying that out, guys, in terms of creative advocacy and representing young people's needs, perspective, and voices. At this point, I would like Macrina to bring you in and take us through where the conversation around comprehensive sexuality education is important to you and where you work.
Okay, thank you, Claire. CSE for me is very important because I work with young girls who, in as much as this is a topic that is being shunned upon, like you can't talk about it comfortably or rather freely, like the way we can talk about how going to learn ABCD in school is very easy. It's not a topic that we can talk freely in our communities and even in our different religion. This is because, you know, it's a topic that it's very sensitive, and in as much as it's something that not everyone is willing to talk about it, how are we going to package this information? Because at the end of the day, we still face the effects of CSC, you see, because girls at the end of the day, they find they're lied to, they get pregnant early. Some of them even develop complications in the process of giving birth, you know, they don't know even what to do. So I feel it's an important curriculum that needs to educate. I feel it's an important curriculum that we need to educate our girls, both in school and out of school, you know, like how are they going to protect themselves? Because it's an anatomy that at the end of the day we still face its effects, you see. So there are things like sexuality. Are they comfortable? You know, because even when we were in school, it was not, the reproductive health topic was really not something we would really not talk about, but how are we going to do it? So for my case, we have like we have people who talk about the SRHR rights to the girls, and you know, at the end of the day, they still get to learn and they embrace. And I hope probably, in as much as our constitution was really not embracing the topic because they felt like they were exposing girls to things that were not supposed to, they were not supposed to be exposed to at their age, I feel like it's still an important topic that should be embraced. Yeah.
Thank you, Macrina, for that. I know that, I also know that Hilda, you work closely with the girl child at MOV. Kindly give us some insights on the same, please.
So I'm going to answer this question through a personal experience with the girls in Northern Kenya. As Macrina is saying, some of these girls have no access at all to sexual education. So it gets them off guard. And sometimes they don't know what to do. So a few years ago, a woman came to my office telling me her girl was in labor and she wanted her transported to the hospital. So we took the organization vehicle and rushed the girl to hospital because her case was serious and different. Why? She was 9 years old, she was pregnant, and she couldn't push. So we had to take her to the nearest hospital, which was like 300 kilometers away. And she got a C-section and got her baby. And then when she got the baby, I think she was almost turning 10 years. She had never received her periods before. She had never thought of sex being a way to get a baby. So she was just experiencing something new. So she got her baby and she told me she wanted to go back to school, and we took her back to school, but she didn't fit in the local schools because everyone was talking about her and the C-section. And we later took her to a boarding school, and the environment was different, so she couldn't either fit in the boarding school. So she ended up dropping out of school. Now she's a mother. Today she's a mother of 4 children, and that's it. That was it for her. So I'm imagining if this girl at 9 years got some exposure on importance of sexual education, like this is what it's all about, and this is how you can prevent yourself from getting early teenage pregnancy, her life would have been a little different or very different today. So having sexual education at a young age is very important for the pastoral girls, same as girls everywhere, boys too, because the father was also a teenage boy. If they receive this information, then they can make informed decisions. They don't have to, they can practice safely, or they can abstain until an appropriate age. So I think sexual education is an important aspect in the teenage, and even before teenage. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Hilda, for that hard-hitting message, actually. Yeah. So I'd like to ask Peter and Sareen to discuss more on the controversies or misunderstandings that surround CSE and how can creatives help in addressing the challenges that come with advocating for the access to implement and comprehensive. Kindly mute your mic, please, if you're not talking. Yeah, as I was saying, I'd like to invite Peter and Sareen to discuss more on the controversy misunderstandings surrounding CSE, and how can creatives help in addressing the challenges that come with advocating for the access and implementation of comprehensive sexuality education in school and out of school.
Hi, Claire. I think just going back to what we discussed earlier, I think, CSE is something that can be seen by a lot of people as awkward and uncomfortable to talk about. So I think us as creatives are really in a great position to help with addressing, the concerns around CSE, because we have the ability to make topics that may be viewed as awkward or uncomfortable, like easier to digest and understand through design. I know when I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of conversations about CSE either, whether it was in my home or in school. One way that I think, finding it really easy to understand is through like visuals and educational books that were addressed to young girls at the time, and me when I was a young girl. So I think as visual storytellers, we can really curate our messaging and our graphics to reach different audiences and age groups, which will make our position really unique in reaching certain messaging for certain areas. So whether it's girls ages, 6 to 10 years old, or 12 to 15 or 16 and older girls, how we curate our messaging can really help to make it easier and to really make it age appropriate, so that it's not just something that students or youth are learning for a short period of time while they're in school when they're maybe a little bit older. It's a conversation that they're having earlier on and something that they're introduced to earlier on that will really help, I think, with a lot of the misunderstanding and controversies. Thank you.
Thank you, Serene. Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, so I guess even from not just design aspect, but beyond that, we also have like a governance aspect that we might also bring into this conversation about the misunderstanding that goes into CSE. And I speak this from the whole aspect of what the kind of pushback that either the political or religious conservatives may have against CSE being taught in school. From a design aspect, I guess the only way we can make it more easier to address those challenges of that pushback would ideally to make to create an evidence-based curriculum where we're not just teaching CSE as just for the sense of it, or we're going beyond that and using actual data to help these different institutions, so the political and religious institutions, to join in on board from what data that we can present to them, and the consistency at which we put out that content. So combining that with having well laid out language, very simple for people to understand, because at the end of the day, we know that we are targeting young people with this CSE. So if we have a nice structure where it starts as simple as, yes, we have the young people in school learning about CSE, and this is going to create a sense of it's going to create some that scientific accuracy that comes with it is going to make them think about how their actions are going to give some certain consequences, and how they can become more empowered and protect themselves. And then when we now have the support of these political and religious institutions, we are able to create a more loud message, and it becomes a bit more human, a more humane approach to it. Because I guess for the longest time, CSE has always been about driving risk and harm that comes with it. So, but what if we just think of this for a moment? How can we make CSE take out the risk and harm that comes with it, but kind of like turn it around into how pleasure and happiness that can come from it. So we are not just warning people about the effects of CSE and what may come around engaging in sex earlier on, but also at the same time giving guys a sense of joy about how their bodies are growing into very beautiful people, and that diversity should not be shamed, but rather celebrated. And people can become more aware of this because we are not the only ones who are pushing it, but also government and religious institutions are also helping to drive that message. So yeah, I guess more or less taking out the risk and harm that comes with it, and at the same time making it more fun for people to enjoy talking about sex and sex-related issues.
That's insightful. I'm actually learning new things here. So yeah, and I think it's quite this discussion is quite showing us how much we should actually include CSE into our curriculums, because it's actually for the betterment of everyone, and the children that are going to be there in the schools to understand why it's quite important for them to actually have this included into their curriculum. So thank you so much for your insightful comments, and yeah, Macrina. So I'll go ahead and continue with the next question. Macrina, I'm posing this question to you. Kindly illustrate very well to us by talking about what creative ideas and strategies can be deployed to support awareness, raising, and get buy-in from the key stakeholders. Examples are parents, religious leaders, government, and teachers. Please kindly take us through that.
Thank you, Claire. For this question, I'd apply the Jesus's discipleship. So Jesus would train, of course, his disciples on what is right and what is wrong. And then later on, he would send them, you know. So for me, I feel like, okay, before that, 2 weeks ago, I attended a social media influencers training that was aimed at ending FGM using our social media pages and commanding. So it was purely a training that was targeting social media influencers and how we could use our different social media spaces to talk about FGM and all that. So AHF is one of the implementing bodies of that is talking about CSE. So I feel that one of the ways that the Jesus discipleship would apply here is you train first on what CSE is, probably to the parents, religious leaders, and probably even these creatives, you know, because the way we would train the religious is not the same way we would train the creatives, and it's not the same way also we'll train the parents. First, we need to understand what CSE is. What are some of the laws that encompasses the CSE, both in Africa, in our country, and both international level? After understanding of that, we move to what are some of the processes, or what are some of the bodies that actually advocate for the same? How can they partner? You know, those are some of the things that would actually be very important. So for me, I feel training is very important. Then from there, like now, if it's the social media influencers, how will they use their social media to influence probably a meaningful change in whatever audience they command? What are they going to talk about? Because some people actually don't talk about CSE because they really don't know what it is and what it entails. We just know it's comprehensive sexual education, but what is it exactly? So I'd actually challenge AHF Africa to organize probably a training on the different stakeholders that have been mentioned. And then now from the stakeholders now, they spread the wings to the different audiences or workplaces, wherever they work. And from there now, we'll be able to have like a community where this issue is no longer a challenge to talk about, and people will embrace it, because if it's not embraced in the chat that I go to, I have no reason to actually embrace it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Macrina. I think at AHF we've already taken that and we'll act on that. Peter, kindly, if you have anything to add on to that.
Okay, so I guess even in part of that, when creatives partner up with these organizations that are pushing for this agenda, so let me take AHF as a baseline standard. So we have AHF, which has these programs running. So we have the Girls Act. We now have this Protect the Child campaign that you're intending to start running. How can now designers and creatives in general, because I guess when we're talking about designers, we are bringing in content creators, we're bringing in social media influencers into it. How can they be actively involved in addressing these stereotypes that have always existed around CSE? So when we bring an organization that is at the forefront of pushing this agenda, and then they're teaming up with said influencers and creatives, people who are now constantly pushing out content around it, in school, out of school, it really now creates a system where now people are constantly being hit with this information. So when you go on social media, you can find some relevant resources that you can use as a parent, as a teacher, or as a religious leader. You can pick out these resources and disseminate that to your relevant people. So now this is going to be part and parcel in pushing for the greater cause, which is we need to help people become more aware. So creating that awareness will now lead to people having enough tools to be empowered, and it also creates a kind of a system of support where sex is not, it doesn't come with any stigmatization. So with sex education, you're going to give people the tools, whereabout at the same time, if in areas where now people might not have access to these resources, you can go to them in other ways. So, and that's where the role of political and religious institutions comes into play, and as well as the organization itself. So AHF has the capability to push these agendas to those remote areas, and us as creatives are playing that central role in giving them the tools and making it easier for the people who they are getting to, more easier for them to understand and apply in their day-to-day life. Yeah, Claire?
Okay, thank you, Peter. And I would love, Sarine, if you have any thoughts on this, I would really love to hear them also. Thank you. Oh, Sarine has an issue with her internet, so we'll just proceed. Peter, again, I would like you to quickly speak to us about some of your experiences, and what are some of the effective creative channels or tools that can be used to strengthen young people's critical thinking skills, to recognize situations that put them at risk or constraints or constrain their choices and to influence meaningful change when it comes to CSE from your vantage point of view?
Okay, so let me actually use some history on this one, yeah. So as one of the channels that have been used at the forefront in strengthening people's understanding about CSE, there was a hashtag that was very prominent in 2015, and that's why I said CSE has been in and about people's conversations for a while. So there was the hashtag support sex ed hashtag that was running around 2015 on Twitter, and it actually blew up in a very huge way, such that now we had people jumping on board and giving their own personal experiences as to how can we approach conversations around consent, how can we talk about sexual exploitation, and this is all within the like a nice comprehensive sexual education curriculum. So Twitter is definitely at the forefront of as a nice channel where you can create constant conversation because it's fast moving. And now we have the integration of other fast media channels that that young people are using these days. So we have the likes of TikTok, and we have podcasts that are coming up, and they're using that to push for different agendas. And if we are now speaking about CSE exclusively, I guess creatives are starting to pick that up, and they're starting to integrate that into their own conversation. So if we have a podcast, you can have the presenters bring in that conversation, and it can spark another. It's usually like a ripple effect. So a presenter brings in the topic, people talk about it, and the conversation continues on further, even beyond that podcast and into other social media platforms. So if we're looking at a cascading architecture where people are constantly being fed this information, and they're given the chance to given their own views, and also given a chance to be corrected, because this is a learning curve. I wouldn't say that everyone has like the full understanding about the sexual education. Even us being as old as we are right now, it's still a bit dynamic, and we're still trying to work our way around it. But we do know the building foundations that every young person needs to have while they're starting out. So let's start with in primary school. What can we send out to kids in primary school to understand the basics of reproduction and understanding what's happening to their bodies and what they can expect? Then that moves on into secondary school, where now the conversation has changed. It stops being about you've already gone through the changes, and now it's transitioning into what's the effect. So I'm happy that my body has changed into what it is right now, and I understand it a bit better. And you can bring in some other aspects as like parenting and contraception, and what's sexual exploitation, what's right, what's wrong when it comes to consent, having a body, that bodily autonomy. Am I allowed to say yes or no? When can I say no, and which situations allow me to be open about saying no? So and social media is well within those bounds to give young people the chance to speak out and create some meaningful action, even to other people in society. So I would say, as a channel, social media plays a big role. Another channel that people can still use are training workshops that also have proven to be very effective in these institutions. So let's say beyond school, how can we integrate our training workshop in our churches, in our workplaces, or even beyond that in our homes? How can parents create an environment where kids can come and openly ask them, hey, dad, so I'm having these changes going on with me, so how can I address that? And how can you as a parent talk to your son or your daughter and make them feel comfortable, so in a way that they can always come to you? And when you create that sense of trust, it's really empowering. Honestly, I wish to some extent that all of us had more chances to talk to our parents about these topics, because they would have cleared up a lot of these things way in advance, that we wouldn't have a big problem with them right now. So it's actually a good thing to have social media being a tool that can be used to push this information out faster, and at the same time using workshops in those remote areas to kind of also complement the social media approach. Claire?
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much for that. Uh, for the wise insights that you have actually given us. And I agree with you that there is need for us to push this agenda and use the content that's actually available at our disposal. Because if we don't do that, I mean, and most of the young people are actually on social media. This content needs to be out there for them. As much as they're on social media, they also need to see it, maybe pop up as an ad. Let it be so annoying to them until they get it that CSE is actually something that they need to be taught and that they need to have with them on their in their everyday lives and daily activities. Yeah. So on to our next question. I will take the cue around education, empowerment, and SRH to allow Macrina this opportunity to tell us what ways can creatives help amplify the importance of comprehensive sexuality education, girls' education, economic empowerment, and access to SRH services for young women and adolescent girls and boys as some key strategies for HIV prevention. Macrina?
Thank you, Claire. As a creative, that means that you're already known for something, and subsequently you command an audience by default. The best way is actually to talk about it. One would ask how. There's the offline and the online mode of communication in amplifying this importance, in that online would use like social media, the social media space. We have things like the Twitter space conversations that is very rampant nowadays. We have things like podcasts, pushing hashtags, we have things like doing interviews with these CSE advocates to learn from them, and also to understand the importance of girl child education, economic empowerment. Yes. We have people like the artists who are creatives. It is very important to involve them in how they could use their art, graffiti to pass this information. And then branding also is a very important factor in passing across this information. We have people like the musicians, poets, the spoken word artists. They basically perform and talk about it. We could also have like whipping bodies online and offline, because I feel in as much as it's a sensitive topic, it is possible to try, but before we even say that it's not possible, or rather it cannot be achievable, have we tried it ourselves? Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Macrina. Peter, I would love you to, I'm quite curious to hear your insights when it comes to in relation to the boys. Could you please shed some light on that in relation to this question?
Okay. I mean, for boys, it's actually been existent for a pretty long time. I guess it kind of was overshadowed by the female empowerment programs that really came through thick and fast. I think in the beginning of 2003, moving on. For boys, it's a bit more about helping them understand how to approach such issues, because we know for HIV prevention, how can me as a guy take my own steps to make sure that I'm not keeping only myself safe, but as well as other people. And that's more or less bringing back power to the youth in general. So if we help our boys understand that that a no is actually a no when it comes to conversations around consent, and at the same time, you know that if you become too aggressive towards a girl in school, or a girl at work, or a girl at home, there's some sense of consequence that would come from it. So it's more or less making them understand, because they do know, for the most part, it's how to execute it that becomes a bit of an issue when it comes to boys. So we can be a bit aggressive with our approach, I would say, but the only way we can empower them to become more knowledgeable about such issues is make it more inclusive. So the girls, adolescent girls, are very much empowered, and that's a really good thing. These projects that have been going on, even while we were on lockdown during COVID-19, during that pandemic, a lot of teenage pregnancies did happen, and it became a very clear issue that I think we should now shift this conversation back to the boys rather than just focusing on girls alone, because it seems like there might be a huge the boys might be a huge source of where all this is happening. So can we make it more inclusive to just include girls and boys, and kind of like segment that into, for boys, this is what you need to do. You need to be more responsible with your actions and know that these actions do have consequences, but we are not putting it out there like we are the bad guys, but we are trying to make it more we're approaching it in a more humane way. We are not dehumanizing the boys and their actions, but we're kind of like helping them understand that if we can't change, you can change your nature, you can change your actions, and approach girls in a different perspective. So I know that this is how I need to treat our young women and our and young girls in society, with the knowledge of sex overall, and any issue that revolves around that. So what do I consider harassment? What do I consider sexual exploitation? So if I ask a girl to offer sex so that I can give something back in return, that is considered sexual exploitation. So and learn that that's not right, and consequently, I guess it becomes a whole lot better for both girls and boys who are going to be coming in after us, because they have a bit of a better understanding and perspective.
Thank you, Peter, for actually directly bringing us to that conversation from the grassroots, where all this is happening. And we really value a lot our convention, our intervention, and would really acknowledge if the current situations would actually provide a flexible framework, which I think would also be demonstrated back to us, and that having this kind of resilience building approach would actually help us in getting communities to address the crisis differently and better. So I think bringing that conversation, I would also like to approach this dialogue with insights from Hilda and Sareen maybe. Kindly take us through this question on how we can use creativity and innovation in supporting young people to better understand their rights on various issues, including health and promoting accountability to young people by healthcare or service providers. Hilda and Sareen.
Hi, Claire. Thank you. I think one of the most important steps we can take as creatives is making sure that we're doing the right research, because not only do we want to make sure that the information we're choosing to visually communicate is accurate, but we also need to make sure that, we're representing in a way that is easy to digest and comprehend. So I also think making sure that we're getting feedback from our youth, if what we're making is resonating with them, is really important. Because if it's not something that's going to be having a connection with them and they're not finding it useful, I don't think it's making it effective. So even sometimes CSE textbooks and reading materials, I think can seem a little dense and hard to understand or boring, which is where I think creatives really get to shine, because we get to make everything look attractive and also help to curate the visuals depending on our audience. So I think how we can use creativity and innovation to better communicate these things is essentially making it more visual, and not just having it be something that's text-based, I think is really important. So whether it's in the form of a video or a comic or some sort of infographic that they can use to follow as a guide, I think anything that's putting it in a more visual and attractive way will probably reach them a little bit stronger. One is just having a designed flyer, so to speak. These are just some tools and things I think we as creatives can consider when we're making materials for young people, when we're designing information on healthcare and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sareen. Hilda, do you have anything to add on this?
Yeah, I believe the creatives can create content, first of all, which then can be disseminated through the various channels that we've been talking about. So once we create content that is not too difficult, not big books, simple to understand, and easy to digest the information, then various platforms can disseminate this information. I also think we can encourage innovation by having these young people we are talking about write their own stories, write their own visions, their commitment plans as per their sexuality. So we can encourage them to tell their stories, maybe through short videos or photo stories or articles. When they're telling others what they wish for themselves, then they tend to believe in what they are writing. I also think it will be more comfortable for them to express themselves if we encourage them to also be creative in their own way, so that we can also hear from them, because communication is two-way. It's about talking, but it's also about listening to them to understand what they're going through, and using the materials that they give us, then we can create content that is actual, it's real, and it addresses the issues that are going on in their lives. Also, for the dissemination, creatives can have a platform already, so we can use the content now that we create from them to disseminate information through various platforms, and this will create critical thinking, and people can put themselves in their shoes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Hilda and Sareen, on that. And so now we're moving to our last part of our discussion, and I would love to invite all the speakers to anchor us through this last question, which is actually what I'm throwing to you. Why do we see minimal participation of creatives in certain developments policy decision spaces such as health, HIV, CST, GBV, girls' education, menstrual health, positive masculinity, etc. And exactly how can we turn these around? Please mute your mic if you're not speaking.
Okay, so I guess we can answer this. I would answer this in two parts. So why there's minimal participation of us as creatives in these spaces is one, if I use Kenya as a use case, we have all these different organizations that have these projects running, and they have different agendas they're trying to put out there in society. So one of the reasons why there might be very minimal participation in of creatives might be they've always been very most of them have always had this conservative approach in addressing these issues. So they will either require very minimal participation of the creatives in their planning, in rolling out this information to people. So you find we've basically been cast out, and we are not very proactive in their planning process, or how to create better strategies in execution. So that might be one of the reasons why you find we are not very much in those spaces. But I would say I'll turn on the flip side, we also have these other organizations that are now coming up, and they have realized the importance of creatives in such roles, and it's slowly starting to turn that around. So that's a good thing. The second part of it would be us as creatives ourselves. Do we actually take the time to want to be part of these events that they hold? Because for the most part, organizations such as AHF or UNAIDS, they have events that they always line up in a typical year, and creatives have the chance to actively participate in those events. And even if you're doing it as a CSR project or as a hobby, it's actually a good thing to turn up and see how best you can approach a situation. You can even give your proposal and see how they can whether they can adopt a strategy that you offer, and that way creatives can now become a nice addition into this process. So I mean, it's slowly starting to turn around. It's not as how it used to be before, and we are happy that even AHF is taking time to bring in creatives into this conversation, because this is really going to shake up the industry, and you're going to get more and more engagement with such creatives. So not just designers, but now you have these influencers, people who have these conversations within their own spaces as influencers or podcasters. It's really starting to come alive, and I hope to see a day where creatives are actually at the forefront of these projects, you know. So yeah, I guess it's it's a gradual process, and I'm eager to see how it turns out. Claire?
Guys, you can hear me? Okay.
Claire?
Oh, you're done, Peter?
Yes, yes.
Any other of the speakers want to add something on that?
Hi.
Hi, Claire. Yeah, I can definitely add on that as well. I think we as creatives, we're in a really great position, because I think when we're engaging conversations about CSE or gender-based violence or things like that to a higher policy group, or whether it's the Ministry of Health or a larger group that can make a real impact, I think bringing in creatives always helps to tell the story more visually. So whether we're pitching a billboard idea or a social media campaign, I think having that sort of visual really gets people excited and want to talk about how we can use these different mediums to really reach more groups and audiences. I could think of one example even recently that my team and I are working on, and it's addressing like the measles outbreak in Zimbabwe. And our team came to our marketing team and brought up that this is a really big outbreak, and we really need to put out some messaging on vaccines. So we put together just a few quick comps and drafts that our team could share with the Ministry of Health to see how we can develop messaging and artwork to reach these groups. And they came back to us with, well, we'd love to add this messaging and this visual and this idea. And it really created and sparked like a conversation between our two groups for the common interest and good. I think we can do the same with CSE, as well as like addressing it to parents, educators, and religious leaders like we talked about previously. And I think also in general, like I think as creatives, at least in my field, we're kind of seen as like the behind the scenes group where we help to create all the materials for our advocacy team that's going to these policy discussions or meetings. And I think that we should also maybe be present in these discussions and also have our artwork as a contribution to those as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Serene. Hilda and Macrina, anything to add on?
Yeah, let me add something. I think Peter said it. It's about providing a platform. That once they're invited to be part of the story of comprehensive sexual education, so it will be good to create a platform like what we have today, involve as many creatives as possible and many other platforms, give them an entry point, and they'll be good to go because I believe they have content they can share. You can also provide content for those who don't have, but all we need is an entry point to for as many creatives as possible, and effect through their audiences. Yeah.
Thank you, Hilda. Macrina, maybe 30 seconds to address this.
Okay, thank you. I feel it's not only creatives, but even us as participants of this webinar. Are we fully aware of what these issues really are? And as Peter said, surprisingly, for the longest time, most organizations have not seen the need of creatives to be involved in their, pushing their agenda. So I feel it's very common for people to talk about what they know and are comfortable with. Sometimes we really may not talk about these issues because first thing, we don't know what it really is. So as different organizations and partners, the best way is actually to set apart and train these creatives independently on what these issues are, the myths surrounding them, how probably they can help AHF Africa, for example, achieve their goals towards the same. And then one thing we need to appreciate is young people are very good at creativity and innovativeness. So training them is one of the important things on, for example, how can they use their different spaces. Creatives automatically are good at something and they automatically command an audience. So how can they use these spaces to talk about these issues they've been trained on? Because I feel it may be a little bit tasking to want to start something new when you've got a lot on your plate to deliver within a short time. After the training, you give them timelines because it's very important to work with timelines. After that, you finance the ideas, probably if these are ideas that need financing. From there, we'll get positive feedback, because in the training that I had mentioned before, we had social media influencers who were actually being trained. And after the training, they were each given $1,000 to actually implement their ideas within a month. So that is something also AHF Africa can borrow to actually see to it that their agenda has been met within a specific period of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Macrina, for that. And I think, I hope the AHF staff that are here, we are taking note of that and we will work on that. So thank you so much, our speakers and our panelists, for sharing your insights of this particular landscape on these crucial issues that are actually present with us, and the creative ideas and strategies that can be deployed to support awareness rising and to get buy-ins from key stakeholders. So moving on swiftly onto a special session, I would like to invite Joshua Mwangi, who is our Creative Design Manager, Africa Bureau, to quickly share with us the concept behind the Protect the Child campaign logo. Joshua, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Claire. Hi, everyone. My name is Joshua Mwangi. I'm the Creative Design Manager for AHF Africa. Claire, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Joshua Mwangi. I'm the Creative Design Manager for AHF Africa. And I'm very happy and I like the conversation that's going on. I like the idea. Thank you, Claire, for bringing this up. Involvement of the creatives in what you're trying to push across, because you know, the creatives are the ones, they are the go between the message we have, and if they understand, we make creative understand, that is the content creators, graphic designers, illustrators, and all that, they get to understand. It will be easier for them to disseminate the message through visuals and anything creative. We worked on this logo. I worked closely with my supervisor, that's Kemi, coming up with this Protect the Child logo. And if you look at the logo, the content, our approach was to come up with a visual that is for young people, that speaks to young people and for young people, whereby we try to help young people in improving their health, dignity, and well-being. If we can go through the visuals or the content, the logo content, you'll see there are some happy youth, some you know, colorful representation of colors that are youth relatable. There's a globe, and there's also a hand that shows protection. Basically is as you can see, the hashtag, because the logo is tied to a hashtag, Protect the Child, is all about protecting the child and helping young people thrive, get informed, and stay healthy and dignified. Basically, the logo is about empowering the youth, the young people, with information, so that they can be in a position to make the right decisions, to get informed, and armed with information, they'll be able and in a position to make informed decisions that will help them stay informed, healthy, and dignified in whatever the decisions they make. Yeah, I think, Claire, I think I've gone through and defined the idea behind the imagery or the logo, the visual.
Thank you, Joshua. I think we forgot to put it up as you are explaining the concept behind the logo, but it's okay. It's going to be shared, I believe. So yeah, thank you, Joshua, and thank you so much to all our speakers, and thank you to our audience again for there's so many questions. We're not going to answer to all of them because we only have a couple of minutes left for closing remarks. But we will definitely take into account and put together a brief write-up of this session with the key messages, and we can consider how to answer your questions in that on the follow-up emails. And so before we close, on behalf of AHF, I just want to commend your stoic attitude that has made each one of you on your virtues of character towards this webinar. And thank you so much for all your great energy and thoughtfulness and curiosity of this topic. We look forward to seeing you again in another physical online event soon. Just to close, I will go back to our panelists to invite them for quick closing remarks, which will give insights or even a call to action that will help us advocate better with creatives, governments, donors, and all gatekeepers at all levels to make sure that this work can be advanced as much as possible and as comprehensively as possible. So starting with Peter, then Sarine, Macrina, and Hilda, would you have a quick message to share with us?
Thank you, Claire, for the session and the platform that you guys created for creatives to come on board and address their different views and perspectives. I, for one, I'm a big supporter of CSE, and I enjoy seeing people learning more about what are safer sex practices and SRH in general. So all I can ask is for everyone here who took part in this session today to be one of those ambassadors who are just trying to push that as much as possible, even while we're having the support of such organizations as AHF. We can also play our role as you don't necessarily have to be a creative, but you can just be an ambassador to push for this, normalizing these discussions among young people. So yeah, thank you. I guess it's just to give a big thanks to AHF for this and to many more. Thank you.
Sarine.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Claire, for organizing this. I had a really nice time hearing from all the different creatives and other speakers, and I definitely learned a lot as well. I think as far as closing remarks, I think one thing that I kind of identified as we were talking is it's not just as creatives our role to create materials that are for the young people for comprehensive sex education, but I think we also need to consider creating materials that are for parents and also maybe religious leaders as sort of like a guidebook that would help make it easier for them when they're talking to youth about CSE. And I think giving them sort of like a tool book or like a guidebook that they can use to facilitate conversations with the youth as sort of prompts or something that can help give them like an outline of how to address these topics that might be difficult for them. I think that might be something that also maybe creatives can help with designing. And I also just wanted to share, I'm also wearing our Protect the Child t-shirt. So thank you so much for working on this, Joshua and Kemi and the team. And I think it's going to be a really great campaign. Thank you.
We need the match, yeah? We need the t-shirt. So yeah, Hilda.
So thank you very much for inviting me to this webinar. It has been mind-opening and critical. It makes me think a little more of what I've been doing and what I can do more. I hope the challenge goes to all of us who are here today on how we can empower the little ones to make the right decisions when it comes to sexual education. It's a sensitive topic, especially in Africa, but I think with the right age-appropriate visuals, podcasts, then it's possible. It's possible for us to help them make the correct decisions, which will save their lives. So thank you very much. And despite the society pressures and the expectations that are there, I believe sexual education is important to our youngsters, and they need it. And we are a big channel that can disseminate this. So we are equal to the task, and looking forward to more engaging webinars and even physical meetings with AHF and many other partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Hilda. We'll definitely take that into consideration. Marina?
I really want to thank AHF Africa for organizing this webinar, and of course, Claire for being an awesome moderator. I want to thank also our participants for sparing time to come and listen to us. I have actually seen quite interesting questions in the chat section, and I have taken note of them. I'm one person who's very interested in matters gender advocacy, especially for the girl child. One thing is, if we want to see change, we have to create that change ourselves. And so let's all get involved. It's not about us as creatives only, even us as participants. We take the initiative of first educating ourselves, and then also how we can use this education probably to influence the different spaces that you command, be it in the government, as parents, whatever. And I encourage you all to be ambassadors of CSE. It all touches us directly or indirectly at some point. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Maybe to take just two questions. I'll take how do you communicate to our parents, teachers, and government that CSE is not just about sex, but also supports young people on other areas of health, rights, and SRH? Maybe just to give you 30 seconds to answer from each of our panelists. Anyone who's ready can click on that. Or maybe let me repeat the question. How do we communicate to our parents, teachers, and government that CSE is not just about sex, but also supports young people on other areas of health, rights, and SRH?
Hi, Claire. I can start. I think one of the things that we can do to at least get them on board is establishing like a common ground with them. So finding something that resonates with them and also us to, and I think what that would, sorry, what I'm trying to say is I think establishing the common ground like with the religious leaders and the parents and us is not just about sex, but it's really to make sure that young people are staying safe and leading lives that, you know, express love, equality, commitment, all of that in a healthy way, which is, I think, something that parents and religious leaders can agree with as well. So I think developing that framework that we can all agree on will set just a good foundation for working together with them on creative messaging. And I think in the same way that youth learn and understand things by seeing the visual, the same applies for everyone, regardless of age. So I think that's there's something else that can help.
Thank you, Serene.
Just to add on what Serene has mentioned, I feel involving them in the policy implementation processes is very key, and also it would make them fully aware of what it is, because actually some of them criticize the CSE, or rather they just blanket it to be purely about sex because it's just from a hearsay perspective. They really don't know what it is. So I feel involving them is very important too.
Thank you. I think we'll only work with that question because we're actually pressed for time. So I'd like again to thank you. Thank you so much to our panelists and our audience. My only closing message or call to action is that from the youth and the youth-led initiatives and all stakeholders that are involved in this CSE journey and SRH, and the ones working in the SRH field, the feminist field, engage young people in the design of your programs, targeting young people and make them the leaders of this initiative, because there's so much power in young people, especially when it comes to listening and advocacy of CSE. Listening is very important, and not just listening the policymakers, but listening to the people in the communities at the grassroots, listening to what the data is saying, and again, listening towards what the environment is communicating to us. And as I always say, that when we listen with the intention to understand and not to respond, because when you listen with the intention to respond, we will respond very quickly without pondering into the message. And most of the time, the impact is really low. But when we listen with the intention to understand, we don't actually know when to respond, but when we respond, we do so in a very impactful way. Also, again, feel free to follow what we do on www.aidshelp.org. And if you have anything else you feel like you need to, that can support the Protect the Child campaign, kindly feel free to reach us on email or even give a call, and we'll be glad to work with you. Thank you, and have a wonderful morning, afternoon, nights, depending on where you've been joining us from. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you too.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.